He walked into the bank just like he always did, calm, prepared, nothing out of the ordinary, until a security guard stepped in and told him he didn't belong. What started as a simple transaction turned into a quiet confrontation. The kind that doesn't scream but leaves a bruise. He didn't yell, he didn't lash out, he documented everything. What followed was a long, quiet fight, not in the streets but through emails, hearings, and recorded truths. Along the way, others came forward. Their stories were different, but the silence was the same. He wasn't looking for justice, but he found it anyway. This is not a story about revenge, it's about what happens when dignity meets documentation and the silence breaks. Would you have stayed silent, or would you have pressed record? Comment below, and if you believe stories like this matter, hit like and subscribe so more people can hear them. Deshaun Rucker checked his watch as he pulled into the parking lot of Citizens National Bank. It was a bit before 9:00 a.m. and the branch doors hadn't opened yet. He liked being early, 10 minutes early if he could help it. His mother used to say, "Time is the one thing you don't get back, so don't make other people waste it." He parked his dusty silver Toyota Corolla in the shade and gave himself a moment. His breathing was steady, shirt crisp, papers in the envelope beside him. He had everything in order. Deshaun wasn't a man of drama. He was 36, a tax attorney who'd been working remote out of his modest townhouse since the pandemic started. He helped small business owners sort out audits and backlogs. A lot of single moms and retired folks on pensions. The kind of clients who still like to shake hands, he liked that about them. Today's errand was simple: deposit a client's retainer check and withdraw $600 for his landlord's envelope under the door rent system. He had done it hundreds of times before. The bank branch in Marlow Heights was familiar to him, not friendly, just familiar. It was one of those beige strip mall locations with a fading red sign and a burnt-out security light in the corner. The kind of place that kept security guards posted during business hours but left the lot dark overnight. He adjusted his glasses and glanced toward the door. A woman in nursing scrubs stood waiting too, swiping at her phone. Probably night shift. Another man in an oversized Orioles jacket leaned against the wall, nodding to some beat only he could hear. Just another quiet Thursday. When the manager opened the doors at 9:01, Deshaun stepped in third. He nodded at the front desk clerk. "Morning," he said softly. No response. He made his way to the kiosk and filled out his slip. $1,200 deposit, $600 cash back. He had done this for years, clear handwriting, double-checked account numbers. It was routine. Then he heard the voice behind him, crisp, authoritative, white. "Excuse me, sir, do you have business here?" Deshaun turned slowly. A tall man in a security uniform stood about 2 feet away. Early 50s, bald, with a thin mustache and mirrored sunglasses, indoors. His badge read J. Whitmore. "Yes, I'm a customer," Deshaun said, calm, direct. Whitmore's lips twitched. "I didn't see you come through the metal detector." "There isn't one," Deshaun said, still holding his deposit slip. "I walked in like everyone else. I didn't ask for attitude." Behind him, the woman in scrubs raised an eyebrow. The Orioles jacket guy had vanished. "I'm not giving attitude, just clarifying." Whitmore didn't like that. "Let's see some ID," he said, stepping closer. Deshaun took a slow breath. "My ID is in my wallet, which I'll show to the teller. I'm here to deposit a check." "This isn't about the check. It's about making sure you belong here." That word "belong" hung in the air. The branch had gone quiet. 2 tellers froze mid-task. The manager was nowhere to be seen. Deshaun didn't reach into his pocket, not yet. "Are you asking everyone for ID or just me?" he said. "You think I'm profiling you?" Whitmore replied, crossing his arms. "Maybe don't act suspicious and we wouldn't be having this conversation." Deshaun remained still. "Sir, you're escalating a simple transaction. I'm asking to be treated the same as every other customer in this branch." Whitmore stepped in closer. "You want to make a problem out of this, because I will ask you to leave." Deshaun was done engaging. He slowly reached into his bag and pulled out his phone. No sudden movements, just a thumb swipe, camera app, record button. "I'd like to speak to the branch manager," he said clearly, camera pointed downward but audio running. "That's it, you're done." Whitmore reached for Deshaun's shoulder. A voice rang out across the branch. "John, stop." It was the nurse. She had stepped forward, arms crossed, phone in her hand too, recording. "He's not doing anything, he was just standing there. You've got cameras, don't you?" Whitmore turned, startled. "This doesn't concern you." She shot back, "It does now." The branch manager finally emerged, mid-30s, red tie, khakis too tight around the waist. "Is everything okay?" he asked nervously, scanning the scene. Deshaun kept his voice steady. "This gentleman is accusing me of not belonging here. I'd like to complete my transaction and file a formal complaint. I have everything on video." The manager hesitated, eyes flicking between Deshawn, the nurse, and Whitmore. "I think we should step into my office," the manager mumbled. Deshawn nodded but didn't move. "First, I'd like to complete my transaction. In full view of the security cameras, I don't want to be alone behind closed doors right now." A long pause, then the manager nodded. "Of course." Whitmore glared, then backed off with a scoff, muttering under his breath as he walked away. The nurse gave Deshawn a nod. "Got your back," she whispered. He turned to the teller, still calm. "Sorry for the delay, here's the check." As the transaction processed, Deshawn stood straight, camera still rolling. Not because he wanted drama, but because he needed proof. He didn't know it yet, but this quiet confrontation would be the first domino in a long and winding road. And while he didn't know the outcome, he knew one thing for certain. He was done being silent. The bank printed the receipt and handed Deshawn the envelope of cash without a word. He thanked the teller politely, tucked it into the inner pocket of his blazer, and walked out through the same glass doors he'd come through, the automatic sensor giving a delayed, almost reluctant hiss as it opened. He waited until he was back inside his Corolla before he ended the video recording. It clocked in at just over 8 minutes. 8 minutes of being questioned, cornered, and almost pushed out of a place he had frequented twice a month for the last 3 years. He saved the video under a simple title, Bank Incident, April 12. His hands rested on the steering wheel for a while. The engine was off. He wasn't angry, not in the way people expect. There was no pounding heartbeat, no rush of blood to the head. What he felt was colder than that, a kind of still, clipped clarity. He opened his notepad app and typed out the time, location, the name on the guard's badge, a short summary. He even made a note of the teller's name from her tag, Leanne M. He wrote down what the woman in scrubs looked like too. Didn't know her name, but her voice had been steady. That was something. He sent a short text to his landlord, running late, had an issue at the bank. "Will drop off cash this evening." Then he started drafting an email. He addressed it to Citizens National's Regional Customer Complaints Department, copied the branch's general email listed on their site, and included a CC to a legal contact he kept around for his clients' cases. Subject line: Security Guard Misconduct, Marlow Heights Branch, April 12 incident. He described the situation factually. No adjectives, no interpretations, just what was said, who was present, and that he had the full exchange recorded. He attached 3 screenshots from the video, one showing Whitmore mid-accusation, one with the woman standing behind him holding her phone up, and one with the manager entering the frame. Time stamped. Clear. He hit send. Back at home, Deshawn dropped the rent envelope through the landlord's slot, changed into gym clothes, and sat on his back step with a cup of tea. He let the sunlight do its thing. His phone buzzed just once, a reply from the customer service team, a templated message saying they had received his complaint and would investigate. No timeline given, no assurance of follow-up, just bureaucracy. It was the next morning when the nurse reached out. He almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something told him to pick up. "Hello. Hey, is this Deshawn Rucker? You were at the bank yesterday. I was the one who, well, the nurse in blue scrubs." His posture straightened. "Yes, of course. I remember, thank you for speaking up." "Of course, that was disgusting. I recorded it too. Didn't know if you had, but figured it couldn't hurt." He exhaled, surprised. "I did record, I sent in a complaint, I'm not sure how far it'll go." "Well, I've got a cousin who works downtown at the district office," she said. "In compliance. I told her what happened and she said if you're serious about following up, she can take a look at the internal protocols and flag it officially. Off the record, but legit." That was the first real movement. They agreed to meet for coffee the next morning, not far from the hospital she worked at. Her name was Erica, and she walked in wearing her white coat, a tired but alert look on her face. She was one of those people who could make you feel like you'd known her for years after only 10 minutes. They reviewed the video together on his laptop. "He's definitely pushing a line," Erica said, watching Whitmore lean in on the screen. "And there's a camera right above you both. The branch's footage would show all this from another angle. You need to ask for it." "I doubt they'll just give it to me." "No, but you can request it formally. That starts a paper trail. Most people never do that, and that's why these things go nowhere." He nodded. "What do I need?" "I'll ask my cousin to send you the internal request language. There's a way to phrase it that triggers compliance review automatically." Erica's cousin, Nadia, sent over a template within the hour. It included statute numbers, regulatory language, and procedural notes. Deshawn cleaned it up into his tone, adjusted a few phrases, and sent it off to the branch, the regional office, and their central compliance inbox. He requested the security footage from 8:50 a.m. to 9:15 a.m., citing his rights as a customer and the nature of the incident. He also submitted a copy to the Better Business Bureau and left a factual, carefully worded review on the branch's public page. That afternoon, he received a call from a different bank manager, someone he'd never met before, from a different branch entirely. Her name was Rebecca Tran, and she introduced herself as part of the internal review team. "Mr. Rucker, thank you for your detailed report. We've begun looking into the matter. I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to speak with a member of our internal security team to give your account." He agreed but requested everything be documented, emails instead of phone calls, no ambiguity. Rebecca respected that. Over the next 3 days, Deshawn continued his work as usual, balancing ledgers for a single mother in the South End whose hair salon had just hit a tax snag and preparing a quarterly report for a retired contractor trying to keep his pension clean. But under the surface, things were moving. On Friday, Erica texted again. Something happened. "You're not gonna like it." A social media post had surfaced from one of Whitmore's extended family members, a blurry rant defending him, saying he was being targeted by cancel culture for doing his job. No names were mentioned, but the tone was clear. The implication was worse. Someone inside the bank had talked. Deshawn saved a screenshot. Quietly. The next day, Nadia forwarded an internal document anonymously. It was a security memo written by Whitmore 6 months earlier, referencing suspicious individuals loitering near the branch with attached photos. One of them included a man in a hoodie who was clearly just waiting for a bus. Another, blurry and out of focus, was of Deshawn himself entering the bank one evening near closing time. It hadn't been an isolated incident. This wasn't just bias, it was a pattern. And now Deshawn understood this wasn't going to be about just one confrontation. This was going to be about the system that allowed it to happen, looked away from it, and quietly enabled it. The check he'd come to deposit was long forgotten. But the video, that was just the beginning. Deshawn didn't tell many people about what happened at first. He didn't post the video, didn't mention it to clients, and certainly didn't bring it up with his father, who would have told him to pick your battles and leave it alone. That was never Deshawn's way. Picking battles, sure, but leaving things alone. Not when the damage had already been done. The anonymous document Nadia forwarded stayed open on his laptop for most of the weekend. The phrasing was careful but unmistakable. Suspicious individuals. Observed loitering behavior. Prevention of potential threats. It was written like a pre-crime report. And if the fuzzy photo was of him, which he knew it was, then Whitmore had been watching him long before their Thursday encounter. Watching and labeling. The language wasn't about safety, it was about justification. It had the same stale, coded tone as neighborhood complaints disguised as concern. There were no reports of theft. No mention of actual incidents. Just shadows painted as threats recorded by a man with a badge and an agenda. He stared at the document for a while before printing it. He added it to a growing folder of evidence, neatly labeled with dates and tags: bank footage request, email from Erica, security memo, screenshot of social post, complaint filed, BBB. He bought a cheap USB stick the next morning and backed everything up. 2 copies, one for his desk, one for the fireproof lockbox in his bedroom closet. On Monday, Rebecca Tran sent an email. "Dear Mr. Rucker, we've reviewed your footage and the complaint. A formal inquiry has been opened regarding the Marlow Heights branch. Please be advised we are requesting your presence for an internal hearing on Wednesday at 10:00 a.m. This is not a disciplinary proceeding. It is a preliminary review. You may bring any material you feel supports your position." It sounded official but vague. Deshawn replied within the hour, confirming his attendance and requesting that a copy of the security footage from the bank's internal cameras be made available to him in advance. He didn't expect them to agree, but asking for it forced a response. They didn't give him the footage. Instead, they sent a written summary of what their cameras had shown. An exchange occurred between Mr. Rucker and security personnel. Mr. Rucker did not exhibit signs of aggression. Guard actions appear to escalate prior to managerial intervention. The word escalate was doing a lot of work in that sentence. He printed that too. Erica offered to come with him on Wednesday. He appreciated it but said no, not yet. She'd done enough and the process hadn't reached the public stage. Besides, he wasn't afraid of sitting in a room with people who hadn't expected him to push this far. He was used to that. The hearing room wasn't grand. Just a generic conference space on the 8th floor of a downtown tower, glass table, beige walls, the usual stale coffee smell. Deshawn arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in a navy blue suit he usually reserved for client court days. Clean, quiet confidence. He brought a manila folder, a hard drive, and a calm expression. Across from him sat 3 people: Rebecca Tran, a man from the security division named Edward Holt, and a younger woman introduced as someone from legal, though no last name was given. Rebecca did most of the talking. She thanked him for his patience, acknowledged the seriousness of his complaint, and reiterated that the matter was being taken seriously. Deshaun listened without interruption. They asked him to walk through the event. He did, slowly, clearly, without embellishment. They asked what prompted him to begin recording. He said it was instinct shaped by history. They asked if he had edited the video. He said no and offered to play it in full. They declined. He handed over a printed timeline of events and copies of his emails. He included the security memo Nadia had sent but left her name off. They flipped through it, eyes pausing on the page with his photo in the corner. None of them said anything for a while. Then Holt, the security rep, leaned forward. Do you have reason to believe this wasn't an isolated misunderstanding? Deshaun met his eyes. I do. What makes you think that? I've gone to that branch for 3 years. I've never had a problem until that guard showed up. And now I find out I was photographed without my knowledge and flagged in an internal report. You tell me, is that a misunderstanding? Rebecca looked at Holt, then back at Deshaun. We're reviewing that memo. He said nothing. The meeting ended after 45 minutes. No conclusions were shared. They thanked him again, said they'd be in touch, and escorted him out with a practiced corporate neutrality. By Thursday, his inbox held a new message from an unfamiliar sender. Subject: follow-up on bank complaint, confidential. It was from a woman named Melina Grant. She introduced herself as a freelance journalist working with a regional outlet covering consumer discrimination cases. Erica had sent her the video with permission and she wanted to talk. Deshaun called her that evening. She wasn't pushy. She asked if he was comfortable speaking off the record. He said yes. She told him the video was compelling, especially because it wasn't dramatic. It's quiet, she said. Measured, you didn't shout, you didn't escalate. That's the part that really sticks with people. He wasn't sure how to respond to that. She asked if he knew anyone else who'd had problems at that branch. I don't, he said, but I suspect I will soon. Melina offered to do some digging. Public records, employment history, civil complaints. She said it could take time, but she had resources. Deshaun agreed. If you find a pattern, I want to know. A few days later, she did. 2 years ago, a young man, also black, also mid-30s, had filed a complaint after being followed into the bank's restroom by a security guard. It didn't make the news. The file was closed without formal resolution. The man had since moved out of state. Melina said she might be able to track him down. Deshaun asked for his name and paused when he heard it. He remembered him. They'd overlapped once or twice in line at the bank. Said hello a few times. Never exchanged more than pleasantries. But he remembered his smile. It had that same polite edge Deshaun carried himself with. There was a second case. A woman, Latina, elderly, filed a complaint about being asked to remove her headscarf at the counter. Again, filed, logged, dismissed. The dots were starting to connect, not loudly, not obviously, but they were there and they were real. Deshaun stared at the list of names Melina sent over. These weren't stories meant to be told in headlines. They were small paper cuts that had been ignored, brushed off, quietly allowed to bleed. This wasn't about one man with a badge. It was about a pattern, and patterns don't break unless someone documents every thread. Deshaun didn't think of himself as an activist. He didn't organize rallies, didn't post long threads online, didn't speak in slogans. He was a quiet man who helped people fix tax messes, and in most cases, he did that work behind the scenes. But as the names started piling up in Melina's emails, something shifted in him, not all at once, not like a fire catching. More like a door he didn't know was cracked open had slowly begun to swing wider. The second man Melina tracked down, the one followed into the restroom, was named Anton. He'd moved to Michigan after losing his job in D.C., working nights at a logistics firm now. Deshaun called him on a rainy Thursday evening, not sure what to expect. Anton remembered the branch immediately. He described the layout, the regular tellers, the same burned-out parking lot lamp. You know, I thought I was crazy for thinking it, he said. Like, I kept telling myself maybe I was just being sensitive, but that guard, he watched me every time. Didn't matter if I was in a suit or gym clothes. Deshaun didn't say much, just listened, asked if he'd be willing to share that experience officially. Anton hesitated. I'm not trying to get pulled into some legal circus. It's not about that, Deshaun said. It's about building a record, quiet, steady, undeniable. Anton agreed to write a statement. The next day, Melina forwarded another name, Patricia Delgado, a retired schoolteacher who'd lived in the neighborhood for 30 years. She was the woman who had filed the headscarf complaint quietly through a handwritten letter. The bank had never responded. When Deshaun met her at a corner cafe 2 blocks from the branch, she greeted him with a kind smile and a cane that clicked with every step. I didn't wear it for religious reasons, she explained. It was a medical thing. My scalp reacts to light now ever since the treatment, but that man didn't care, said it was policy. I told him it was discrimination. He said I could leave if I didn't like it. She told her church, they'd told her to pray on it. That was the end of it until now. Deshawn recorded her story with her permission and typed it up for her to review. She corrected a few words, then signed her name in looping cursive. He added it to the folder. He also began noticing smaller signs. His messages to the bank's regional team started taking longer to receive replies. Rebecca Tran, who had been polite and open in earlier emails, now responded with stiff one-liners and boilerplate phrases. The phrase ongoing internal process began appearing in every message, regardless of what he asked. He requested a follow-up meeting. They declined. Then the subtle pushback started. An anonymous comment appeared on the review he'd left for the branch, something vague and accusatory, suggesting he had a history of confrontational behavior. It didn't use his name, but the implication was clear. He flagged it. The platform removed it a few hours later, but the message lingered. The following week, one of his longtime clients, a dental hygienist named Mrs. Evans, called him sounding nervous. "I got a strange call today," she said. "Someone from the bank asked if I had ever had issues with you handling my account." Deshawn blinked. "What?" She repeated it. The call came from a blocked number. They hadn't left a name. "I told them they were out of line," she said, "but I wanted you to know something about it didn't sit right." It didn't sit right with him either. He hung up and stared at his kitchen wall for a while, then wrote the whole thing down in his notebook. No proof, but that didn't mean it didn't happen. On Sunday, Melina published the article. It wasn't splashy, just a clean, well-sourced piece that laid out the facts. Multiple complaints of discrimination at the same branch, the same security personnel involved, internal memos, dismissed reports, a lack of response from bank leadership. She quoted Antoine anonymously, used Patricia's full name with her blessing, and embedded Deshawn's video in the online version. By Monday morning, local news had picked it up. By Tuesday, the branch manager was on leave. No public statement yet, just a temporary sign in the window saying limited services would be available due to staff transitions. Deshawn didn't smile when he saw it, but something eased in his chest. Later that day, he received an email from a lawyer named Karen Morrison. She introduced herself as part of a nonprofit that supported victims of institutional discrimination. She'd seen the article, seen the video, and wanted to help. He agreed to meet her at her office downtown. Karen wasn't what he expected. Mid-40s, soft-spoken, a steady presence. Her walls weren't covered in plaques or slogans, just a few framed photos of past cases, none of which she mentioned. She let him do most of the talking. "I don't want to sue," Deshawn said plainly. "I'm not here to push you into that," she replied. "I'm here to make sure you have options. Sometimes just having counsel on record makes institutions behave better." She offered to write a formal letter on his behalf requesting the full investigative findings from the bank's internal review. It would be the first step in forcing transparency, not through courtrooms but through pressure. He agreed. By the end of the week, her letter was sent. A copy went to the bank, to the regional office, to the Federal Oversight Board. It was professional, factual, and quiet, but the kind of quiet that made people nervous. More messages began landing in Deshawn's inbox. A former teller, fired the year before, no official reason given. Said she'd seen Whitmore harass customers regularly. Said management always sided with him. A former assistant manager said he'd left after getting tired of being told to de-escalate situations that Whitmore had provoked. A college student who used to do cash drops for a nearby grocery store said the guard followed him every time, even made him unpack his bag twice. Deshawn built a spreadsheet. Each row was a story. Each column a date, a name, a phrase: made to leave, asked to remove scarf, escorted out, told to return with ID. No one had been arrested, no one had yelled or thrown a fit, but there was a consistency in the silence, the type that doesn't draw attention unless someone insists it matters. He wasn't leading a movement, he was just gathering proof, but momentum has a rhythm of its own. By the end of the month, the city's Consumer Protection Board had scheduled a meeting to hear public comments on institutional discrimination in financial services. Deshawn planned to attend, not to speak first. Not to demand anything, but to sit there, records in hand, and be ready, because something had shifted, not in the branch, not in the company, but in him. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. A manila envelope slid through his mail slot with no return address. Inside was a single folded page from a law firm, not one he recognized. The language was civil but cold. It said that due to the ongoing investigation and public commentary, Deshawn Rucker's relationship with Citizens National Bank was under review, and that his accounts could be subject to closure at the bank's discretion pending further internal findings. He read it twice. The meaning was clear. They weren't threatening to close his account yet, but they wanted him to know they could. A soft threat, institutional and bloodless. He placed the letter on his desk without comment. That same afternoon, he tried logging into his business banking portal and found his access temporarily restricted. A red banner across the top said, "Your profile is currently under administrative review." No reason given, no warning. He tried calling the customer line but got transferred 3 times before someone admitted that yes, his account had been flagged for review and no, they couldn't give any details at this time. He hung up and opened his notebook. He dated the entry and described what happened. Then he emailed Karen Morrison, attaching screenshots of the locked account page. Her reply came quickly. "This is likely retaliatory. I'll send a preservation notice to their legal team and request written confirmation of the reason." She did. 3 days later, his access was restored, no explanation given. The banner disappeared. The customer rep said it had been a technical glitch. Nothing more, nothing to worry about, but it wasn't just the bank. That weekend, someone knocked on his neighbor's door asking about him. A middle-aged man with a clipboard and no clear reason for being there. Deshawn's neighbor, Mr. Keene, told him about it afterward. Said he was doing a follow-up on a consumer survey, Keene explained, squinting over his coffee mug. Didn't seem right. Asked if you were home often, if you worked from here, that sort of thing. Deshawn thanked him, but his jaw had tightened. He didn't ask who sent the man, he already knew. Melina called that same night. She received an anonymous email through her website tip form accusing Deshawn of harboring a personal vendetta and of harassing staff at the bank. It included a grainy photo of him walking into the branch 2 years ago. The email suggested he had a history of confrontations that had been covered up or overlooked. "I've seen this before," she said. "They're building a case against your character, quietly." For the record, Deshawn didn't say anything for a while. He sat at the edge of his bed, the phone on speaker, the light from his desk spilling across the carpet. "Can they make it stick?" he asked finally. "No," Melina said, "but they don't need it to stick, they just need to muddy the water." That phrase lingered. He spent that weekend reviewing everything he had. The spreadsheet, the testimonies, the video, Patricia's handwritten letter, Anton's statement, the photos, the article, the email chains. He read through them not to reassure himself, but to confirm what he already knew. The facts were clean, the evidence was strong, but facts didn't always win. By Sunday night, he made a decision. He emailed the Consumer Protection Board. Asked to be added to the list of speakers for the upcoming public session. He kept it brief, he would speak. At the hearing, the room was full. Community members, staffers, a few cameras in the back. The board sat at a long table at the front, microphones clipped to their collars. There were 30 speakers scheduled. Deshawn was number 22. He sat near the middle row, listening to the others. A grocery store worker talked about being followed in a different branch years ago and giving up on banking altogether. A mother described being questioned while trying to cash a check her son had mailed from college. A small business owner shared how she'd moved her accounts after being asked to provide ID for the 4th time, despite having been a client for a decade. Each story was short, 2 minutes, controlled, personal. When his turn came, he walked up, placed a printed copy of his notes on the stand, and spoke without reading. "My name is Deshawn Rucker. I'm a tax attorney. I've lived in Marlow Heights for 6 years. I went to Citizens National Bank last month to deposit a check. I had been there many times before. I was questioned by security, asked if I belonged there, accused of suspicious behavior. I recorded the incident. I filed a complaint. Since then, I've been contacted by others who experienced similar treatment, same branch, same guard, same pattern. I have documented each of these cases. I have provided them to legal counsel and journalists. I've also received threats. My account access was restricted, my home was visited, my neighbors questioned. I am not here to accuse every banker or security guard. I am here to say that this happened. It keeps happening, and it needs to stop." He paused. "The systems that are supposed to protect people like me are being used to punish us instead, quietly, subtly, legally, and I want it on the record that I said so." He thanked them and returned to his seat. No one clapped, that wasn't allowed, but he felt the weight of people turning slightly in their chairs to look at him, not out of spectacle, out of recognition. After the hearing, a woman approached him in the hallway. She looked to be in her 60s, wearing a navy cardigan and holding a reusable grocery bag. "You're Deshawn?" she asked gently. He nodded. "My granddaughter told me about what happened. She saw it on the news. I'm glad you're doing something." Most people don't bother, they just get quiet. He didn't know what to say, so she filled the silence. "Don't get quiet, not now." He promised he wouldn't. That night, he received an email from Rebecca Tran. The subject line simply said, "Status Update." In the body, it stated that the guard in question, John Whitmore, had been placed on indefinite administrative leave pending further review. No apology, no responsibility taken, just a procedural shield. Still, it was movement, and movement matters. The next morning, Melina told him that a national paper had picked up her story and wanted to expand it. Karen said her legal team had begun drafting a formal civil rights complaint. not just against the branch, but against the institution's entire security policy framework. Erica texted a photo of Patricia smiling with her church group, holding a printed copy of the article. And Deshaun, he got up at 6 a.m., made coffee, and opened his laptop. He had 3 audits to review, 2 clients to call, and an affidavit to finish. The work went on, but so did the case. And the silence that had been so carefully kept in place for years was no longer intact. The subpoena came on a Thursday afternoon. Deshaun had just finished his final call of the day when the knock came at the door. A process server in a gray hoodie handed him a sealed envelope and asked him to sign. Inside was a formal request. The Consumer Fairness Committee was opening a formal review of institutional security practices across multiple regional banks, and Deshaun had been requested to appear as a primary witness. The hearing wouldn't be private. It would be streamed online, open to media, recorded for public access. It would include sworn testimony. He was being asked not just to speak, but to swear to the truth of everything he had submitted to become part of the official record. Didn't hesitate, Karen helped him prepare. They spent several evenings reviewing his evidence, organizing statements, rehearsing answers without rehearsing them too much. He wasn't trying to perform, he just needed to be clear. One misstep, one phrase that could be twisted, one contradiction, one lapse in memory, and the whole structure might shift under his feet. They would be looking for cracks. Don't try to outtalk them, Karen advised. Just speak plainly. Let the evidence work for you. The hearing was set for the second Tuesday of the month, in a mid-rise government building that looked like every other one built in the 70s, all concrete corners and long windows with half-drawn blinds. Deshaun arrived an hour early. He wore a navy suit, same one as before, polished shoes, a watch that had belonged to his uncle, no tie, just neat, direct, grounded. The hearing room was larger than he expected. Rows of chairs filled quickly as more people arrived, advocates, reporters, curious onlookers, a few staffers in tailored blazers whispering behind clipboards. At the front, a long table with 3 microphones waited for him and the 2 other witnesses scheduled to testify. One was Patricia Delgado, the other a former bank employee who had filed a sealed report. Deshaun sat between them. Across from him, behind a curved dais, were 7 committee members, a mix of city officials, financial ethics consultants, and public accountability representatives. At the center sat Chairwoman Darnell, a calm-eyed woman with silver hair and a voice that never rose above conversation. After the opening remarks, she turned to him. "Mr. Rucker, you may begin." He stood, adjusted the mic, and opened his folder, but he didn't read from it, he just spoke. "I'm here because I tried to deposit a check," he said. "That's how this started. I walked into a bank where I've been a customer for years, and I was treated as a threat. Not because of what I did, but because of what someone assumed I was." He gave the date, described the incident, played a short clip from the video. Then the second clip, the nurse, Erica, stepping in. The footage played silently. No music, no commentary, just the audio, just the truth. You could hear the guard's tone shift, you could hear the difference. Then he told them about the memo, the one with his picture in it, taken without his knowledge. He described how he had been added to a list of suspicious individuals for doing nothing more than walking in late one day. He laid out the names of the others who had come forward. Not accusations, statements, all documented. He described the locked account, the character smears, the visit to his neighbor's door, quiet retaliation wrapped in bureaucracy. He explained how the system hadn't protected him, how the official complaint process had stalled until pressure arrived from outside, how it took a journalist, a nurse, a lawyer, and months of meticulous work just to get a single guard placed on leave. He didn't ask them to believe him, he just gave them no room not to. When he finished, there was a pause. Not for applause, none came, but there was a hush, a kind of weight that settled into the room. Then the questions came. One committee member asked if he had ever had issues with the bank before. He said no. Another asked if he had tried resolving this privately. He said yes and showed the email trail. Someone asked about his motivation for continuing. "I didn't want to," he said. "I still don't. But if I stop, this just happens again to someone else who won't have the time or energy or support to fight it." Chairwoman Darnell asked the final question. "In your view, is this about one guard, one branch?" He shook his head. "No, this is about the policies that allow someone like that to work unchecked for years. It's about the silence, the protection, the paperwork that buries complaints until they expire. This is a design, not a mistake." When he stepped down, Patricia stood up. Her voice trembled slightly, but only once. She told them about the scarf, the humiliation. The look on the guard's face, the way the teller had pretended not to notice. "He made me feel like I was dangerous," she said. "I'm 72, I taught first grade for 40 years, I've never stolen so much as a pen." The third witness spoke last. A young man with tired eyes and a stillness to him. He'd worked behind the counter for 16 months. He'd filed a report when Whitmore accused a deaf man of acting erratic because he didn't respond to questions fast enough. Management had sided with security, told him to trust the training. He resigned 3 weeks later. The committee recessed for deliberation, 30 minutes. When they returned, Chairwoman Darnell read from a prepared statement. It wasn't a ruling, not yet. Just an acknowledgement, but even that was more than most ever get. This committee recognizes that credible, corroborated testimony has been presented indicating a pattern of discriminatory behavior within the Marlow Heights branch of Citizens National Bank. We are recommending that the Office of Financial Oversight initiate a full external audit of the institution's security procedures, complaint handling policies, and customer interaction protocols. Deshaun didn't react, he just nodded. It was official now, on the record in motion. Outside, reporters waited. He declined to speak, just walked to his car, same silver Corolla, same quiet road. He drove home with the windows cracked. When he got inside, he put his folder on the table and sat at the kitchen counter, phone in hand. A message came in, Erica. Watched it, you did good. Another came from Melina, they can't pretend it didn't happen anymore. And another from an unknown number. I've been through the same, thank you, please keep going. He didn't reply right away, just sat there. The day had been long but not heavy, not in the way that breaks a person, more like the kind of tired that comes when something starts to give. Not fall, not collapse, just give, shift. Outside, the wind was picking up. The story wasn't over, but the silence was. It took 6 weeks. Not for the hearing to be uploaded. That happened in 2 days. Not for the clips to circulate online. That happened within hours. But for the systems that had always moved slowly, purposefully slowly, to finally start turning toward accountability. Citizens National Bank released a statement as expected. It was crafted carefully, approved by legal, filtered through PR. They used phrases like deeply regret and committed to better service and valuing all customers. The word apology didn't appear, nor did Deshaun's name. But tucked beneath the press release in a file posted to their regulatory filings page was the change that mattered. John Whitmore's employment had been terminated, not reassigned, not transferred, terminated. The internal review concluded that he had violated several policies regarding customer engagement, use of discretion, and conduct unbecoming of security personnel. The memo noted a failure to escalate concerns properly and a pattern of disproportionate scrutiny toward certain demographics. Deshaun read it in silence, then he saved it as a PDF, added it to his folder, and closed his laptop. The same week, the Office of Financial Oversight released its preliminary audit findings. In the last 4 years, Marlow Heights branch had the highest volume of unresolved customer complaints in the region. Of the top 10 branches with flagged incidents, 5 were under the same regional management umbrella. Training protocols had been outdated. Complaint resolution timeframes had not been met. At least 3 internal reports had been ignored or closed without follow-up. By the end of the month, 2 regional managers were placed on administrative leave. The Oversight Board announced the creation of an independent committee tasked with rewriting institutional security guidelines across all public-facing branches, not just at Citizens, at every bank in the district. None of it would have happened if Deshaun hadn't hit record. That's what people kept saying, but he didn't believe that. The video mattered, yes. The video got attention. But it was everything that came after: the calm, the paper trail, the names, the people who had once been alone and suddenly weren't. He knew how easily the story could have gone another way, how close it had been to disappearing like all the others, but it didn't, and now it lived in the record. On a quiet Thursday, he got a letter from Patricia Delgado, handwritten, folded twice. No return address, just his name and street number in block letters. Mr. Rucker, it began. I watched your testimony 3 times. I don't know how you stayed so composed. I would have cried. I think I still might. You have given us something most of us never expected, to be heard. She ended the letter with a short line. Let me know if you ever need someone to write something longhand. He smiled and placed it in the folder. The folder was now thick enough to need a binder clip. He hadn't opened a case file that size since law school. He started getting invited to panels, requests from community organizations, quiet coffee shop meetings where someone said they had been through something similar, not always at a bank but in parking lots, schools, boardrooms, apartment offices. They didn't want advice, just to tell someone who would understand. He always listened. Never tried to fix it. Just pointed them toward people who had helped him: Karen, Melina, Erica, others he'd met along the way. He didn't want to be a symbol. He wasn't built for speeches or protests. He wanted to go back to work, and mostly he did. His clients never left. If anything, more came. One day, the woman from the cafe, the one who used to clean houses, brought her daughter in to open her first tax account. Because you're the one who stood up, she said. And that means you won't ever try to talk down to her. The girl nodded shyly. Deshaun asked for her employment form and got to work. Things got quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet, not the fragile silence of something buried, more like the stillness after a long, necessary storm. The bank never reached out to him again. His account remained open. He moved most of his funds elsewhere gradually, not out of spite, just out of a quiet understanding that trust didn't return just because consequences finally arrived. Some fractures can't be patched. Karen's firm moved forward with a broader complaint against regional financial institutions. Melina was hired by a national outlet. Erica never stopped texting updates. Nadia was promoted. Patricia's letter ended up laminated in a community center bulletin board. Anton wrote a blog post about what had happened to him, and 3 people he didn't know emailed him to say they had been through the same thing. It rippled. Deshaun didn't watch every ripple. He didn't track every headline. He just kept the folder, updated it when necessary, and left it in the drawer beside his desk. He had another check to deposit, this time at a credit union on the other side of town. The teller was polite. The guard nodded once and then went back to looking out the window. He signed the back of the check slowly, slid it through the glass, and waited. "Anything else I can help you with today?" the teller asked. "No," he said, "that's all." He stepped outside, sunlight pressing against the glass, and let the door swing shut behind him. No cameras, no questions, no headlines, just a man handling his business, the same way he always had. But this time the world finally noticed, and that made all the difference.